Hey Bazam Boozers, Big Nicky C here to talk about a movie today. Today we're going to talk about The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, or Das Cabinet de Dr. Caligari. This is a 1920 silent horror film from Germany. It's actually a German expressionist film, which means that the backgrounds are very interesting. A good example are the windows, which are basically anything but squares. Triangles, rhombus, rhombi, whatever that word, plural of rhombus, basically anything but square, like I said. Both this episode and next episode, I will talk about two films that are very much similar. So stay tuned for the next episode. It's very clear that one of my favorite directors, Tim Burton, was very inspired by this movie, as he's known for being a little weird, let's say. I think this mostly comes out in The Corpse Bride and The Nightmare Before Christmas, which really are inspired by this German expressionist art style that I think he conveys perfectly in those movies. This film is actually considered the first horror film of all time, which means that it has some tropes that have become standard in basically every film ever. Well, first of all, it's a slasher film, which is where someone goes around and starts killing people, like Psycho or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Dr. Caligari sends out Caesar to kill whoever makes him mad that day. That's the start of this slasher genre, which has created so many icons like Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees. Another thing is the fact that it pioneers the idea that the monster falls in love with the beautiful lady, which is very similar to King Kong. I think that the last thing this film does is actually this super common in films, especially today. The idea that the story was all in the main character's imagination. In this film, the main character has a clear mental illness and has been hospitalized for it, but we don't find that out until the end of the film. I think this film has a lot of strong points because the story is simply amazing. Dr. Caligari, a somnambulist, controls Caesar, who has been sleeping for 23 years. He then wakes Caesar up to fulfill the murders that he wants. For 1920, this film is pretty complex and has a lot of underlying things that I really love. It talks about the real monster inside, which I always think is a great film for movies. It's a little crazy to me that this film is actually 100 years old, and we are still talking about it. I'm still talking about it, at least. It has either indirectly or directly influenced so many actors, directors, and films, and that should not be denied, and it can't be denied. What personally blows my mind is that on the Rotten Tomatoes list of the top 100 best classic films of all time, this one ranks number 3. The only movies that are ahead of it are The Wizard of Oz and Citizen Kane, which are two of the most acclaimed films of all time, and is only one spot ahead of probably the most acclaimed film of all time, Casablanca, which is another personal favorite of mine. So as the title says, you have to watch this film. You might be wondering, how much does it cost? Well, it's free. On YouTube, you can search up The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and see a version of this film for free. I also have a link in the description for the version I watched, and a title card, which is right now. Although the version I watched doesn't have the original music, it's super chaotic and amazing. It's great. The fact that it has the original tint is on the film I watched is a huge one for me. So, this is an amazing film. You have to watch it. Make sure to watch it. It's great. It's so important to today's movies culture that you have to watch it. And hope you wait until the next episode where we talk about the fellow German silent horror film. I'll give you a hint. It's called Nosferatu. Until next time, Big Nicky, signing off.